Live from London, this is BBC News. A heat wave grips Europe with temperatures in some countries at over 40 degrees Celsius. Hundreds of Palestinian families are forced to move as Israel launches another wave of airstrikes across Gaza overnight. President Trump says he's not offering Iran anything after the Iranian deputy foreign minister told the BBC it needs guarantees the US will not bomb his country before entering any nuclear talks. 2 firefighters are shot dead, with a third critically hurt in an ambush in the US state of Idaho. Still determined to fight for democratic change, freed Belarus opposition leader tells the BBC. Hello, I'm Lucy Hawkins. Welcome to BBC News Now. It's still June, but Europe is being gripped by a heat wave with temperatures in some countries in excess of 40 degrees as the hot weather reaches its peak. Over the weekend, both Spain and Portugal provisionally recorded their hottest June day on record. Heats with temperatures above 40 degrees centigrade set to continue across Europe. We do have these red heat warnings in Portugal, coastal Croatia and Sardinia. Alongside the increasing temperatures is the risk of wildfires too. Firefighters are continuing to battle blazes in the city of Izmir on the Aegean coast, which has forced people to leave their homes. We have some live pictures coming to us from around Europe. This is the scene here in London. It's very hot here today. Parts of the UK could see one of the hottest June days ever. Temperatures of 34 degrees in Greater London and in Bedfordshire. 21 Italian cities are also on the highest alert. This is familiar to all of us, the Colosseum in Rome, but Milan, Venice, Sardinia as well, but the Eternal City really baking in the heat today. And the Spanish city of Seville in southern Spain, the worst affected region, Andalusia, with temperatures in the mid-40s recorded in neighbouring areas and Seville as well. Well, tourists in Seville are braced for the heat. Let's have a listen to how they say they're going to cope with it.
Yeah. Water and shade, water and shade.
Yeah, we got up early to enjoy the sights early before the heat got too intense.
It's awful. It makes me collapse. We need to be looking for shade constantly. Air conditioning in the car, those who have it. And look, we have these bracelets that ring with all these heat warnings.
We cope with dignity, carrying on with our daily life as we need to keep working. We need to adapt to the circumstances, which I'm convinced that apart from being a specific circumstance, it's also an effect of climate change.
Well, also in Seville is the UN Secretary General. He's attending a conference on financing for development. Antonio Guterres was sure, of course, climate change, one of his big passions. He mentioned it while he was addressing delegates.
A
world shaken by inequalities, climate chaos, and raging conflicts. The link between peace and development is clear. 9 out of 10 countries with the lowest human development indicators are currently in a state of conflict.
So how much can we attribute this heat wave to climate change? Here's our environment correspondent, Jonah Fisher.
The climate scientists are very clear. They don't like to specify a specific event as being down to climate change, but in the big picture, they say our warming climate has made heat waves and extreme weather events in general much more likely and much more severe. So in terms of, for example, the southeast of England in June, they looked at that with a specific analysis. They believe that it has made heat waves in June 10 times more likely. And when we talk about why that's happened, well, it's because of greenhouse gases being put into the atmosphere, broadly speaking, most of that due to the burning of fossil fuels. So while we can't say with great confidence that this specific weather event is entirely due to climate change, this is happening more frequently and with much greater intensity because of what we've been doing to the climate and the atmosphere.
To Guy Hedgecoe now in Madrid. It's going to be hot there today, over 30 degrees Celsius, but of course those record temperatures up to 46 in the south of Spain as well. He talked about what the government is doing now to mitigate some of the conditions.
The main thing the government has been doing has been informing people and warning people, and that's the central government and the local governments around the country. They've basically been giving advice that they would normally be giving in the middle of July or August when you would normally see these kinds of temperatures. So they're saying, Obviously, stay out of the heat at the hottest time of day, which tends to be the mid-afternoon or late afternoon in most parts of Spain, and pointing to those high-risk groups who are the elderly and people with underlying health problems and small children. There have been some cases where public buildings have been made available for people to take refuge from the heat. And these are kinds of gestures that, again, you would normally see in the middle of July, but we're not used to seeing them this early in the year.
Susanna Fisher is Associate Professor at the Department of Risk and Disaster Reduction at UCL, and she told us about the precautions that are now needed to handle this kind of extreme heat.
I think there are both the immediate measures that need to be put in place now, almost the emergency response measures, so things we've been talking about making sure people can access cool public spaces if they need to, minimising outdoor work, making sure children are comfortable at school or miss school if they have to. So there's the immediate things that we've been talking about. And of course, heat waves particularly affect elderly people or children or pregnant women. So all of that needs to be put in place now. But this, of course, is going to become a more likely occurrence for us under climate change. So longer term, Europe also has to think about what are the systemic changes that need to put in place. And there'll be things about thinking about the infrastructure. Are our railway systems able to cope with the heat on the rails? What about the road surfaces? What about our health systems to have these sudden peaks in demand? And it's also about how we think about our cities, how we make the buildings themselves able to keep people cool, but also how we design in space, how we build in shade and green spaces, and make sure that people can continue to live in these types of conditions. But of course, that's all within the context that we really need to, at the same time, be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions so that the need to adapt is less over time.
And Susanna, if this is the new normal, the new reality, are governments grasping that and making these changes?
I think governments are at the start of this journey because we're experiencing these extreme heat events. It's becoming clear that this is a really serious problem. But adaptation so far, as I say, has not gone far enough in terms of really addressing how this is going to affect the systems and the infrastructure within which we live in. So we probably need to move from an approach where we are responding immediately to one event to thinking longer term, how do we manage if these are going to become regular events as we anticipate they will be.
And would you also then, Susanna, because of the heat at the moment, be worried about wildfire season in Europe?
Yes, well, as conditions become hotter and drier, wildfires are potentially more likely. So that is obviously also another factor, yes.
A wave of Israeli airstrikes across much of Gaza overnight has triggered the displacement of hundreds of Palestinian families. People in Gaza City said dozens of air raids targeted densely populated eastern neighbourhoods. A school was hit in the Zaytun area that was sheltering displaced families. And in the last hour, we've seen this large plumes of smoke you can see there coming out of northern Gaza, the IDF continuing its operation in the territory. This bombardment follows one of the largest evacuation orders issued by Israel since the war with Hamas resumed in March. Our Jerusalem correspondent, Wira Davis, updated us on Israel's latest offensive.
What used to be a place of learning rendered overnight into a demolition site. Dozens of families had been sheltering at the Al-Falah school in Gaza City when an urgent IDF warning told them to evacuate. When the missiles struck, whatever their target, the families had left, but hundreds have again been made homeless. In other parts of northern Gaza, even areas towards which Israel had told people to evacuate, the airstrikes killed people, young and old. 5 dead here at the Al-Shati refugee camp. Those left behind grieving are tired of war, tired of death.
May God relieve us and may this war end. This war of genocides and massacres. We want them to end the siege and the hunger.
It felt like the first night of the war all over again, is how one witness described the overnight strikes. Relentless bombing shook the ground. The sky rained fire without end, he said in an online message. Benjamin Netanyahu is still basking in the success of Israel's short war with Iran, saying an immediate threat to Israel's existence has been removed. But his plans for Gaza aren't clear, as the Prime Minister comes under pressure from hostage families at home and allies abroad to sue for peace and end the war. Some generals are thought to be on the verge of concluding that military operations in Gaza are close to being achieved, perhaps concerned over the descent of the Gaza campaign into more attritional guerrilla-style warfare that would lead to more deaths of hostages, civilians and soldiers. As the days fold into weeks, the number of fatalities in Gaza inevitably go up. Areas declared safe by the IDF are often anything but, and anyway are difficult to reach. After 21 months, this war of attrition still has no clear end. Wira Davis, BBC News.
In terms of that end, I've been speaking to the Professor of Public Policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University, Sultan Barakat, and asked him for his reaction to these reports that we're hearing from Israel that the IDF are close to wrapping up their ground offensive in Gaza.
Well, I mean, to be honest, they've run out of targets. There's nothing left in Gaza. And the military commanders have expressed repeatedly the fact that they're becoming more vulnerable by operating from within Gaza than before. So their soldiers are now being targeted. And we saw the last 2 weeks, the number of casualties amongst the Israeli soldiers is greater. So there is no direct benefit from them being operating within Gaza. The difficulty here is that Netanyahu and his coalition government, they're still pursuing the objective of defeating Hamas and releasing the captives. And that objective has simply proven impossible. You cannot defeat Hamas the way he understands that. And I think now coming out of the 12-day war with Iran, he must feel very frustrated that he could not achieve his objectives in Iran either, and maybe frustrated also by the way Trump has reacted to that scenario. So he's now taking his anger on the Palestinians, and it continues. The objective will remain, as far as he's concerned, is to displace the Palestinians. And the more bombing that takes place, the more uninhabitable the land is. And he makes it much more possible for an ultimate agenda that he really wants to push ahead with, and that is to displace them out of Gaza.
What about the possibility of a ceasefire then? US officials in Washington today, as always, there are mediators in Cairo and in Doha as well. There are these key sticking points that remain, but does it feel like a ceasefire could be any closer?
Well, I think it's in the interest of Trump in particular to bring an end to this conflict. He has invested a great deal over the last few months in the Arab world, particularly in the Gulf states. You know, billions of dollars are at stake at the moment. He does not want that to be at risk. He would like to see an end of the war in Gaza, and he must be now pushing for that. Maybe something similar to the way he ended the conflict with Iran could be at play. But I personally suspect that Netanyahu will play for time. He will delay things as much as possible until he visits Washington again, where he can put on an act similar to the one he did this time last year in July, I think 24th of July 2024, where he will go and try and play the Congress and the Israeli lobby in Washington and place more pressure on the Trump administration to further support his objective. He's not going to rest until he sees the Palestinians out of Gaza. And this is unfortunately driven both by his ideology, extreme ideology, but also by the need for him to survive politically. Any less achievement in Gaza will lead to the collapse of his government, which relies entirely on his very fragile coalition with the extreme settlers. So it's likely that even if they engage in talks, Netanyahu will drag those talks on until he visits Washington, D.C.
And let's just show you the live pictures we have coming into us from northern Gaza at the moment. Some of the smoke that was in the air has died down a bit, but Palestinians in northern Gaza have been reporting one of the worst nights of Israeli bombardment in weeks. This is after the IDF issued mass evacuation orders for people as well. So the IDF offensive does continue. Something we'll keep across for you here on the BBC, around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. President Trump has dismissed media reports that said his administration had discussed possibly helping Iran access as much as $30 billion to build a civilian energy-producing nuclear program. He said he was not speaking to Iran about its nuclear program, just over a week after the US joined Israel in bombing its main sites. He took to social media to say, "I am not offering Iran anything," unlike Obama, who paid them billions, before going on to say, "Nor am I even talking to them since we totally obliterated their nuclear facilities." Well, that comment comes as Iran has insisted on its right to continue enriching uranium. A deputy foreign minister has told Lise Doucette, who is visiting Tehran, that the government wouldn't enter nuclear talks unless the Trump administration guaranteed not to bomb the country during any negotiations. Rafael Grossi saying the US strike last weekend had caused severe but not total damage, and Iran could still produce a nuclear bomb. Lise Doucette, our chief international correspondent, is being allowed to report on Iran on condition that none of her reports are used on the BBC's Persian service. This law from Iranian authorities applies to all international media organisations operating in Iran. This is her report.
A city in the eyes of the world, Tehran, where the fragile truce holds. On the streets, reminders of the 12-day war, of the decades-long tension with the US and Israel.
Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. But one of Iran's top diplomats wants to make clear, when bombs fell this month, they were negotiating with America. He insists that can't happen again.
We are hearing from Washington telling us that they want to talk. By the way, no date has been set.
President Trump talked about this week.
I'm telling you that we have not agreed to any date. We have not agreed to the modality. Right now, we are seeking an answer to this question. Are we going to see a repetition of an act of aggression while we are engaging in dialogue?
Satellite imagery shows Iran's nuclear sites were badly damaged. But Iran still says it won't stop enriching uranium.
Why should we agree to such a proposal?
Because Iranians on this visit have told us that Iran has paid too high a price for enriching uranium, causing suspicions even among your European partners about why you were enriching to 60%. It wasn't necessary.
First of all, 60% is something which is being used for peaceful purposes.
But it did create this situation of suspicion.
The level of that can be discussed. The capacity can be discussed. But to say that you should not have enrichment, you should have zero enrichment, and if you do not agree, we will bomb you, that is the law of the jungle.
But they would say Iran has to do more to reassure the world that its nuclear program, its ballistic missile program, isn't threatening.
We were discussing with Americans. We were in the middle of talks. All of a sudden, we face a clear act of aggression. And those who are criticizing us, they should criticize the way that we have been treated. They should criticize the Americans. They should criticize the Israelis. And if they do not have the guts to criticize America, they should keep silent, not try to justify the aggression.
Iranians worry the dark of war will return. Their days lived with no guarantee life will get better or worse. Their lives held hostage to age-old enmities.
Lisa Zet reporting there from inside Iran. Let's speak now to Aman Mahmoodian, who is a research fellow in international security with a focus on the Middle East at the University of South Florida. Aman, very good to see you. How do you today, waking up this morning, see the prospects for diplomacy and talks here, given we've just had President Trump say on Truth Social that he's not speaking to Iran's leaders and he's not offering them anything because they have totally obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities?
Well, that's a great question. To be frank, I couldn't imagine any more complicating scenarios than this because from what we can see, neither Iranian nor the Americans are in the same page. The Islamic Republic's position is very firm that the damage was marginal. They have won the war. Iran has no intention of backing down from its nuclear project. They actually, on practice, they are trying to implement the satellite image from Fordo and Natanz. Specifically speaking, Fordo shows that Iranian construction and nuclear technicians are working around clock as fast as they can to reconstruct, to get the project back. The recent reports that indicates it is possible that some section of the Fordo hasn't been dismantled or hasn't been touched is also cause for the optimism among the Iranian regime and its fan base that they can renew the enrichment of uranium quickly. President Trump, on the other hand, being very quite firm that he has no intention of tolerating any level of enrichment of the uranium in Iran. Only a couple of days ago, when he was asked during a press conference that would he bomb again Iran if Iran resumes its enrichment of uranium, he didn't hesitate for even a second to say that yes, he will. It seems to me that if the current path continues, if there will be no mediation, no compromise on any sides, what we have right now, the ceasefire is going to be short-lived, and the chances of the resuming of the exchange of fire between Iranian, Israelis, and Americans, or even others, is quite notable if the progress continues with current pace and on the current direction.
And Aman, as you say, if it does indeed prove that these strikes were counterproductive, that the regime has now decided to restart up their program, it's given them that impetus to start up again, to work towards a nuclear weapon, then what about the IAEA? They've said that they won't have them back in, but do you think there's any possibility that there could be some involvement with the inspectors getting back in? Because obviously that would help alleviate some of the concerns about what is happening on the ground.
Well, this is another great question to pose here. And to be frank, Iranians have been shifting the blame to a great extent on IAEA and also Mr. Grossi, its director, personally. They blame him for the intelligence breach and penetration of their, nuclear spectrum. But I'm not quite sure that it's a fair blame or fair, critic. Because if you look at the Israelis' penetration over Iranians, systems, you could see that it's quite wide, from the nuclear project to intelligence to regional policy to missile program. Mr. Grossi didn't have any involvement in others but the nuclear project. But what it seems to me behind this rhetoric that some of the Iranian officials have against Mr. Grossi and his organization, it seems to me that Iran is trying to use its current lack of collaboration with as a leverage. Basically, it tries to signal to the Americans and the rest of the West that we are willing to resume the collaboration, to resume the cooperation, let them to resume or renew their monitoring of our nuclear facility and what has left out of it and where is the highly enriched uranium as our sign of goodwill. But in exchange, they would definitely kind of expect some indicator of the goodwill from the West, presumably or most likely somewhat of the, security guarantee that there wouldn't be any strike from the Israelis anytime soon.
Aman, good to get your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. In the US state of Idaho, 2 firefighters had been shot dead. A third was critically hurt in what police are calling an ambush. The attack took place close to the city of Coeur d'Alene, which is near the border with Washington state. The body of the suspected attacker has now been found, along with a weapon, but what is not known is the motive for this shooting. CBS News correspondent Naomi Ruckham is following all the developments for us from New York.
Investigators are not releasing the suspect's name or anything about the type of rifle he used or a possible motive. The sheriff told reporters that as of now, investigators don't know if the suspect shot himself or was killed in the exchange of fire with law enforcement. But investigators are expected to go back up to collect more evidence in the coming hours. Lucy?
Naomi, it's unusual, surely, this kind of crime in the US. I can't think of another time where something like this has happened.
Right, Lucy. We know gun violence might be quite common in America, but this dual crime of arson and shooting, and then the suspect using the fire to lure his victims, it's also tragic and rare. There are so many challenges when dealing with a tragic incident like this one, from the tactical and logistical difficulties of fighting a fire in this type of terrain to the emotional toll these crews are facing as they fight a fire just after losing their own comrades. Keep in mind, this is a popular recreational area in northern Idaho. Crews estimate the fire now to be about 15 to 20 acres in very steep terrain. Additional resources have now been called in, including aircraft and heavy equipment, hand crews too, all to put out these flames while mourning the loss of their own.
To Brazil, where the former president Jair Bolsonaro has called for an amnesty for hundreds of people currently in prison for their involvements in the riots and the attempted military coup following the 2023 inauguration of his successor, President Lula da Silva. Thousands of his supporters took to the streets of Sao Paulo, where Mr. Bolsonaro was speaking at a rally. He is currently on trial for his role in the alleged coup. He denies all the charges. We are keeping across this heat wave here in Europe at the moment. Hot in London today. Let's show you live pictures of the River Thames. As you can see there, we're expecting 34 degrees. That may not sound massively hot for you depending on where you are in the world, but for this time of the year in June, it really is. Everyone complaining? I'm one of the few people who quite likes it.